Uh, Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it's a pleasure to interact with young minds with an academic inclination to understand a new subject. And being a tax professional, I can tell you this is the most exciting time to be in tax, to learn something new right from the conception of it. I've tried to summarize the implications of GST on industry, right? So when I say industry, it's not a factory, but when I say industry, it's the total sector from the perspective of the business. So Sudeep gave you a good summary of what tax law is, what has changed. I would try to summarize and give you an understanding of how life has changed on the side of the business. So everybody just visualize that you're not in the classrooms anymore. Just try to take yourself a little forward by say 5 years. You'll be in some boardroom discussing some business decision. I'm sure by the time you reach there, you may not have this kind of a transition discussion, but this is the time when businesses are taking some new calls, taking some new decisions, realizing the benefits and also facing some consequences of GST. So over the next half an hour, I'll try to summarize these impact areas for everybody to look at and visualize that if you were in an industry, you were taking a decision, how would this have impacted you? To start off with, I'll present a quote from a very renowned person. I'm sure everybody is aware of him. This broadly summarizes what my supply chain team felt once GST was introduced. Okay, I think the audio is not working, but I'm sure everybody knows this dialogue. मुझे ना स्टेट के नाम सुनाई देते हैं ना दिखाई देते हैं, मुझे सिर्फ एक ही नाम सुनाई देता है, वो है इंडिया. So I'll give you a visualization. I am from the tax team and our job is to stop businesses from taking some tax risky positions. So the typical things we used to say is cross-border trade, cross-state transactions are not permitted. There have to be watch-out areas, and supply chain used to listen to us. Of course, now with this GST coming in, this is the line that we hear more often, wherein they're saying that, okay, मुझे कोई state सुनाई नहीं देता, मुझे सिर्फ India है अभी. And that is the key positive which has happened post-GST. It's now one nation, one tax in true sense. You transact from Bihar, you transact from Karnataka, you transact from Goa. You are aware of the tax positions. The products that you sell from Andhra or from Gujarat have the same rate of tax. There are no state barriers now to stop you, and that helps you take more informed decision making. Most important and the most relevant positive from GST has been a constraint-free supply chain. So if you're aware of the erstwhile locations of warehouse, the warehouses were set up, one warehouse for every state. And that was a necessity because it was always a burden to cross a state border. There will be checkposts, there will be so many barriers, there will be tax costs involved in that. With GST coming in, what you do now is you plug a map of India and you take a pin. You say that, okay, I'll place a warehouse here. Irrespective of the state borders, you know that you will be able to serve say a radius of 200, 300 kilometers from that pin. That flexibility that GST has given you is tremendous. The savings that the businesses are making on supply chain is tremendous. And that's one hidden and a not so visible benefit of GST, which I'm sure all industries are realizing now, and the benefit of which will pass on to the consumers as and when people realize the benefit. Rationalizing and pricing. So I'm from an e-commerce sector, and I can tell you when we stock a product, for example, a mobile phone. So you guys order a mobile phone in Karnataka. We actually decided the location of storing the mobile phone basis the tax rate. So mobile phones have different tax rates. So if you go to Maharashtra, the rate was 12.5% VAT, and in Karnataka it was 5% VAT. So all the mobile phones all over India were being sold from Karnataka. We don't care the logistics, we don't care anything because that 7.5% delta was such a big delta that any business case would work for it. Thanks to GST, now the pricing has a certain amount of tax irrespective of where you sell it from. There is one rate for the product across the country, and that has helped in rationalizing pricing. So you're not bothered about overheads, you're bothered about direct costs rather than working at the tax aspect of it. Yeah, this is one major benefit that has come in, right? So earlier, if a company, you take any big company, they will have operations across the country, and each of these states has its own tax provision. You need to apply for registration in a different way. You need to file your returns in a different way. The compliance calendar varies across the months for across states. But GST, okay, you're out of it. You're now having just one platform. Go ahead, follow the same rule irrespective of where you're expanding. So that simplicity and uniformity in compliances has been a very big plus for the business. Sudeep touched upon this, saying that there were different taxes, right? There were 20, 25 taxes earlier. Each one was not creditable. So, let's take an example. Say, Christ, of course, will not have a tax liability, but say if you take an example of somebody like Google. Google wants to buy a laptop from a store. Now, the storekeeper pays rent. Rent was subject to service tax, and the storekeeper cannot take credit of the tax because he is not having a service tax liability. He has a VAT liability. So the service tax was being a cost for the storekeeper. And when storekeeper sells the laptop to Google, he's going to charge VAT. And Google has nothing to do with it because they don't sell goods, they actually provide services. So they have a service tax liability. So the tax that they pay on laptop was a cost. So this cost of tax, at every chain is what we refer to as cascading effect of taxation. So if you see what happened in this case was the trader, when he was paying rent, the tax was a cost for him. He built it into his price. When he sold a laptop, VAT was a cost for Google, and they were building it into their price. Well, with GST, that cascading effect is gone completely. So now let's visualize that example again. So the trader paid rent, he paid GST on it, he take credit of it. And when he sells a laptop to Google, he charges GST, takes credit for this, and so he pays lesser amount of tax now. And Google also takes credit of the laptop. So this chain, the uniform chain of taxation has reduced the overall tax cost. And that's a very big plus for the business. Better certainty, yeah. I know as tax professionals, we thrive on complexity, we thrive on uncertainty because that's the fodder for our careers. But yeah, GST has brought in a lot of certainty. There are mechanisms to get more certainty. For example, the government has introduced advanced ruling mechanism. You have a doubt in taxation, well, don't live in doubt. Go seek a clarification, get the answer, and be certain about your work. So that platform of certainty, which I believe is going to be a uniform one across the country very soon, will give a lot of business planning opportunities, a lot of aggressive things that we can do without taking too much of tax risk. This site, I think, is common. Anybody who's gone on long drives before 30th June, this site was very common. A person who's traveling from Bangalore to Hosur, at some point of time, you'll hit a lot of trucks. Their trucks were not standing just for a snack. They were actually waiting for a checkpost clearance. So there was a sales tax officer who would check the documents and let the truck travel from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu. What I understand, again, this is not data that I have already, but the government says that post GST, the travel time of trucks has reduced by a fifth, a 20% reduction in your travel time. So now you're able to reach customers faster, you're able to plan logistics better, and logistic costs also saves. Ability to freely move the goods. Now, as I mentioned, there are no state barriers anymore. Earlier, for example, if I were to move any product from Karnataka to, say, Delhi, I had to cross multiple state borders. That was one issue. I also had to forego certain amount of tax, and there was always a cost. So people would not freely move the goods. With GST allowing credit fungibility completely, there is complete free movement of goods across the country. Lower disruptions from government, of course. With lower checkposts, we don't really have too much of interference on movement of goods. So the goods, you're able to plan everything better without any disruption from government. Well, these are the things that the government has actually used a lot. I don't know. What's the first logo? The blue one? Awesome. Second one? Third one? Awesome. Which is the fourth one? Awesome. So all four of them have been completely used by government. You won't believe, I have myself sought clarifications from government on at least 5 occasions over Twitter, and in 24 hours, I have got a response. I know that response is not binding on the government, but the speed at which you're getting the response back from the government is thrilling. We don't have that efficiency in industry which the government is demonstrating on Twitter. YouTube has been a fantastic platform where government has used it for trainings. People are sent invites to attend trainings, and those trainings are uploaded on YouTube. Anybody can connect on them, learn from them. Google Play Store has apps which have Google data, GST data, and it has complicated things like rate finders. There are plenty of rates available, plenty of products. You just punch in your name of the product, you get the rate from Google. And of course, Digital India, using the online platform for everything. I'll give you a real life scenario. When we wanted to start operations in Telangana, we had to first go and file a manual application to a Babu, to the government officer. And the officer will then scrutinize and maybe reject it, saying that this sign is missing, that page is missing. You go again with a better documentation, there will be a notice, this data is missing. The total process of starting a business, right, was taking more than 15 to 20 days just to start the business. And that involved so much of government interaction that a lot of energy was being spent on that. Now just imagine anybody starting a business very soon from here. If you were to start your business with this, what we call Shri Ganesh, it's a little depressing. Why 15, 20 days at government office just to start my business? GST now gives you e-registration. You apply for registration, you file your documents, you sign the documents electronically through digital signature. If there is a notice, you get the notice and you get 3 days to respond to it. Otherwise, 7 to 10 days, the registration is at your email box. No interaction with the government. I think that's phenomenal to think about. As I mentioned, every state has its own portal till date. Now, there is just one tech platform called GSTN, which is the backbone for the total GST across the country. You as a seller can send something to me. You will file your returns in GSTN. I'll file my returns in GSTN. Both of these can be tagged. What it has done is, because you are so closely connected to each other, and there's a uniform database for the total data, government is now employing analytics in that. And the power of analytics is so much that they can cull out cases where there is non-compliance. That fear of non-compliance and adverse effects of it is driving much better compliances across the country. I think that's something which has really changed the way people are doing business. A lot of people are getting into more and more compliant zones from non-compliant. As I mentioned, there are a lot of apps which have flown in for GST as well. So what? Sounds too good to be true? Well, I don't think so. But yeah, what's the catch? First, it impacts your working capital. Not a major issue, but yes, you pay a lot of taxes upfront. You do a stock transfer, you pay tax. That tax is sitting now in your credit. It's a cash outflow for you, but now sitting in credit, you have to utilize it over a period of time. So now that's a big issue for all the industries, because you will be buying from hundreds of vendors. How do you go and catch everybody and match your sales and purchases? As of now, for now, it has been suspended. But yeah, this is a very potential big working capital issue. Why it becomes a working capital is also interesting, because I know of a lot of small and medium sellers, customers, who buy goods from registered dealer. Say the invoice says 100 rupees of product value, 28 rupees tax, 128 is the invoice value. They will pay to the seller only 100 rupees. They will say, pay you 28 only after I get the credit. Now the 28 rupees is a working capital block for the seller. So there are these complications which have come in, which are impacting the working capital health of a company. Higher compliance cost. Now you heard that, this is so technology driven. Now you need trained manpower to do your compliances. And obviously, because the registrations are state-wise, obviously your 3 returns are there every month. So the compliance costs have gone up for the business to comply and to maintain the reconciliations and all those things. Smaller enterprises have been hit a little more severely compared to larger enterprises, because they used to have some excise exemptions, and that was to safeguard those smaller enterprises. Now everybody is on the same level playing field, which is a disadvantage for smaller enterprises. They need to scale up on the efficiencies rather than looking at government for an incentive or a competitive advantage. And transitional challenges, of course, this is the biggest change ever in the taxation history of India. This bigger change will obviously need a lot of preparedness, a lot of transition, and the change is for everybody, the biggest of corporations, the smallest of shopkeepers. Everybody has his own unique challenges to meet. There have been disruptions in supplies, there have been frequent changes in law, the IT preparedness has been something which has been catch up rather than being more proactive. So the transitional challenges have been one of the major aspects for moving post GST. But yeah, I think broadly the flavor that GST has left is that it is a very big positive for an industry. They can realize more efficiencies, be more certain about it. There are a few challenges that can be overcome over a period of time, not really something which is killing them right now. That's it. Thank you so much.